Hi, everyone. This is Raquel.
Hi, and this is Jennifer.
Welcome to Madness Cafe.
This is a feminist podcast where we talk about women's issues, politics, and health and wellness.
And where those issues intersect. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Madness Cafe. Today, Jennifer and I are joined by Mama Rainbow, mother of the Rainbow Warriors and owner of A Meaningful Dream. Now, normally, you guys know I would do way more of an introduction, but I think this is a story best told by Mama Rainbow, so I'm going to let her finish off that introduction herself. Mama Rainbow, thank you for being with us.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. So I am Mama Rainbow, the leader and mother of the Rainbow Warriors, and I am also owner of A Meaningful Dream. So my legal name is not Mama Rainbow, of course, but it is a name that has been gifted to me by my audience and people over time. And it actually started off as Rainbow Liz, but then over time, I graduated to Mama Rainbow. So that is now who I am. I represent somebody who is multidimensional and interdimensional. I am not one thing. I'm not one person. And I've come here on this planet and just life in general to highlight everyone and for everyone to know that they are seen and they're heard and they're loved and that they're felt. That's just like a little synopsis of the name itself and who I am just as a person and as a being. And then my business, A Meaningful Dream, has been around for quite some time. She started in 2013 as a blog, and it was like a lifestyle blog. I talked about like thrifting and fashion and food and just like local like reviews and stuff. And I also highlighted dreams too, which is how A Meaningful Dream was named, just based off of a dream that I had. And then over time, it became about magic and tarot and crystals and holistic healing. And now I also co-host Red Tents. I also do a lot of women's work. I also make things. So I make oils, bundles like sage or palo santo, so smudge sticks. I also make wands, spell candles. I make so many things that sometimes I lose track. I also make moon water, which I call my Luna essences, and I make them every full moon and new moon. So a lot of everything that I do is about working with Mother Earth and recognizing that we are living embodiments of Mother Earth and getting reconnected back to ourselves, to our cyclical nature, to our own personal cycles, whatever that might be, but still honoring your truth and your unique gifts and magic and why you came here, and to just elevate consciousness. So that's a lot of what A Meaningful Dreams mission is to just elevate consciousness, show those that you can manifest your dreams and that you really can have your dreams become a reality. And without that dedication and that manifestation and without that self-belief, nothing will happen. But if you believe in yourself, remember, we're infinite beings with infinite potential. Why not believe in the best possible outcome? Why not believe that we can do the things that we really full-heartedly believe that we can do? And so I'm here to basically show the impossible is possible.
Wow, that's huge.
That's awesome.
Yes,
wow.
Thank you.
That's so cool. And I like what you said about us being the living embodiment of Mother Earth. I love that.
We are.
We have been so excited to talk to you. And I think for me personally, one of the reasons is I have 100 questions, but the other reason is because some of the things that you talk about make me a little bit uncomfortable. And therefore, I think those are topics that we should put on the table, get it out there and discuss it. And the first one I want to talk about is you said you're involved with Red Tents. What is
Absolutely.
that?
So back in the day when we all lived in villages, our wombs would sink and we would go off into these spaces called moon lodges or menstrual huts or red tents. And essentially what red tents were is a space where menstruating women, even if you were in a menopause state or beginning to start your menstruation, this is a place where we would gather together as sisters and we would share stories. Our grandmothers and elders would share their stories and their history and their lessons and things. We would do magic, we would do divination, we would do healing. We would offer our blood back to the earth as a way of honoring our sacred cyclical nature. Menstruation is a time where we're at our most powerful too. So this was a time where our culture and society knew that and honored that. And this also included a lot of the men taking over all of the duties that the women typically would have for that whole week in order for us to go into these sacred spaces, to then like have rites of passages for those who are first bleeding. We would also give birth in these spaces too. We would also celebrate those who are going in menopause as well. Sometimes deaths would even happen in these spaces. So ultimately, this was a space of healing and of sisterhood, magic, and reconnecting to our bodies, which is essentially reconnecting to Mother Earth. And so, as a red tent holder, we are bringing back a lot of those indigenous traditions and re-envisioning it in a new way. So when we have a red tent, you are not expected to be bleeding because not everybody's wombs are synced the same way now. However, my co-host and I, our wombs tend to sync a lot. It's just a space where we talk about these things. We talk about abortions. We talk about births. We talk about womb trauma. We talk about ways to heal our womb trauma. We even talk about how our eggs, which all of us, we were all once at one point, our egg was sitting in our grandmother's womb. The energy that our grandmother carries does actually pass on along with our mother too. So then we also talk about ways of healing generational trauma and karma within our own mother, maternal, and paternal lineage. And a lot of the other things we talk about in the red tent too is, especially with the last red tent, ways to decolonize the womb from the patriarchy and how to recognize that. So they're very powerful spaces. I have held them all at my house. The next one I have coming up is actually on Moon Day, February 13th. That's just on a Monday from 6 to 9 p.m. at CV's Holistics at my new studio space that I'm sharing with two other women. And we are going to be talking about how to honor the divine feminine through sacred dance, flow, and sensuality. And we're theming it as like a Galentine's Day theme. So we're encouraging our sisters to come dressed in red lingerie. Typically, we would ask for you to come dressed in red to honor the blood, to honor the mother, because that is essentially what our menstrual cycle really highlights, is our ability to create life or our ability to not create life, depending on what we so choose and desire to do. So it's a space of empowerment. It's also a space of remembering that our blood that we're shedding is so sacred and is so powerful. It's the only time blood is shed without violence.
Oh, that's
Never
a
thought of
great
it that
point.
way. So this is exactly what I wanted to talk about. So I'm super excited about it. But like in my growing up, nobody said the word menstruation.
Mm-hmm.
Why are we so uncomfortable with that now? And how can we get more comfortable with it?
This is part of the reason why we're putting these red tents together, is because there is a common uncomfortability with menstruation. And I think a lot of it has to do with the patriarchy, if I'm being completely honest, and the knowledge that has gone out of, like, the patriarchy has gone out of their way multiple times in history to hide that and to make it dirty and shameful and gross. And a lot of men who may not be in tune with their own femininity don't understand what menstruation actually is and what is currently happening. When you're menstruating, you are at your most powerful. You are in most tune with the earth, along with your womb and just your own intuition. And I think the patriarchy have known that for a very long time. And so there's been a lot of work to undo that knowledge. Actually, back in the day, in ancient Egyptian times, our moon blood was actually used in healing salves and medicine, because it has, and they do recognize the power in which menstruation and your moon blood has for healing. It was also believed back in the day, and it still is seen in a lot of cultures, like women die to this day because they're bleeding. And actually in 2018 in Nepal, a woman died because she was sent, in their cultural belief, if you are bleeding, you are not allowed in any temples, any mosque, or anything like that, because you can scare the gods away, or because you can make the crops go bad, which we know is quite the opposite. We know our moon blood actually fertilizes the crops. I've tried this too, and it does work. That if you show your naked body to the elements while bleeding, that you could even manipulate the weather. And so over time in our
Hmm.
culture, I think men saw that and understood that. And even in current sweat lodges that Native Americans host, a woman bleeding cannot show because all of her energy is going and being grounded and is pulling the collective energy, and anyone that she's around is going to pull that energy into the earth and prevent people from being able to reach those like higher states that you are wanting to achieve in sweat lodges. And so this woman in Nepal in 2018, because of some of these cultural beliefs, if you're a married woman, you only have to stay out there for 5 days. If you're an unmarried woman, you would have to stay out there for 7 days. And she died because these were like huts. It was just like a one tiny little room, no bathroom, no heat, no running water, absolutely no sanitary, anything, nothing. And it got to 0 degrees and she died because she was trying to keep herself warm. And it wasn't so much of the cold, it was the fumes from the fire that she had to
Oh,
like keep coming in and like to keep her warm. And she died. And this is something that happens like to this day. And even in India, this is like a problem where women aren't allowed in certain spaces. And I think the patriarchy and men know, they're aware. That's why they're scared. And that's why it has become such a taboo thing. It was even said to this day that the most sacred act a woman can do for a man is have sex with them on her menstrual cycle, because now she's offering one of her most holiest powers to a man. And that's like a high initiation for a man to receive, because now they have been tapped into that sacredness. I feel like talking about it is one way that we can kind of overcome the taboo of the
mhm.
menstruation. The other thing too is just, I think, finding love and honor for these cyclical things that our women bodies and wombs go through every month, whether you're in menopause or menstruating or not. It's a lot of undoing. It's going to be a lot of unconditioning and a lot of unlearning, but
Right.
also remembering. And I feel like that's the key here for women is remembering, because this kind of lifestyle was very common knowledge. There's also a happy prophecy that, and this is from Hawaiian culture, believes that war began because women stopped giving their blood back to the earth, and that when women are giving their blood back to the earth, there is peace in the world.
Wow.
And I think we all understand and know that the patriarchy and colonization over time has gone out of their way to create
Hmm.
war over anger and food and just like this from the smallest things.
Hmm.
So, and I think it's also associated with witchcraft as well, which is also
Right.
why it's been seen to be so taboo. But
Hmm.
Right.
essentially, it's just attack on being a woman at the end of the day. Like your
Right.
menstruation is not something we can avoid. It's not
Hmm.
something you can stop it with birth control, but that actually does more harm than it does any good versus just honoring what it is. And then it also, it ties in with the cyclical nature of the moon as well.
Hmm.
The moon doesn't go with the Gregorian calendar. The moon doesn't go with like the patriarchal kind of work, do all the time. That's just not how women be. That's not how we're all meant to be. We are
Hmm.
meant to rest. And in these times of downtime and resting is when we're going to receive our higher ideas, see clarity, have and share power. I'm actually on my moon time right now, and I think it's no coincidence that my moon time aligned with this. It also aligned with my friend's birth, which is also some other kind of work that I've been doing too, is being like a birth shaman priestess for other women as well. So I feel like it's just about getting reconnected with your body, understanding your own flow, understanding that there's also a lot of trauma, and
Hmm.
trauma is hard to talk about. It's a process, right? You can't heal it overnight. And so I
Yeah.
think the other way that we can also, aside from attending your own red tent or throwing your own red tent in your community, it's just looking for sisterhood, and also knowing that we are in a time where the feminine is being attacked, but also on the rise at the same time. Actually, the
Hmm.
word apocalypse is associated with the opening and the awakening of the womb. And I believe that that is, yes, it,
Interesting. Can you go into that a little bit? That's
yes,
interesting.
yes, yes. Actually, I just read this in a book that I'm reading right now. Let me grab that for you so I can just
Sure.
like reference it a little bit more easy. As we all know, like in biblical texts and a lot of other things, there's been a huge talk of the apocalypse. Even the Mayans and the Aztecs, they were traditional timekeepers. They talked about the apocalypse. And I personally believe that the apocalypse is the divine feminine kind of being like, enough is enough.
Yeah.
We are there.
Yeah.
Enough
Yeah,
is
exactly.
enough.
Enough is enough.
Enough
Enough
is
Enough is
enough.
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 And we're coming and we're going to honor our
Mhm.
sacred rage, but we're also going to honor our sacred love and our compassion. And there needs to be both. And with that
Yes.
comes the darkness and the void, along with destruction, in order for there to be a restructure, a rebuilding.
What's the name of the book that you're referencing?
Womb Awakening, the Initiatory Wisdom for the Creators of All Life. And this is by Azra Betran and Serene Betran. I
Cool.
literally just started it. So I'm just going to read this paragraph for us. So this womb of God lives at the root of all religion. The opening Hebrew words of Genesis, and excuse me for my pronunciation, Brish, Brishneth are usually translated as in the beginning. But there is a deeper and more occult meaning that has been lost or deliberately obscured, which is translated in the womb, referring to the cosmic feminine generative force that birthed all creations from her primordial cosmic womb. Likewise, apocalypse means the revealing of the womb and comes from the root word calypso, which is covered, concealed, hidden in the chalice or the cauldron, which are ancient symbols of the womb and the uterus. And when you look at the uterus, that's essentially what the uterus is a chalice or a cauldron.
Interesting.
Super cool.
I barely just started it and it's already has a lot of beautiful information and even goes into free birth and natural birth, and it goes into sacred union. It goes into all kinds of rites and rituals and just really beautiful things. So I really do recommend it.
So to go back to your red tent for just a minute, do you
Mhm.
actually collect your moon blood and put it back in the earth? And if you're doing that, what does that ceremony look like and what does it represent?
I do, just to give a background, I collect my moon blood with a cup. I use
Uh-huh.
a cup every month, and I know a lot of women also use a sea sponge. So for anyone who is curious or interested how they can collect their blood, that is how I like to do mine. Or some women like to do free bleeding, and then when they wash, they'll just kind of dilute it with water and squeeze it out. Essentially, by offering it back to Mother Earth, again, like your menstrual cycle is the most powerful energy that we hold as women. It's a time where we're shedding our eggs that are unfertilized. We're shedding life that we chose to maybe not pursue, but we're also shedding energy. We're also shedding trauma. We're also shedding things just to no longer serve us. And so when we give it to Mother Earth, we're essentially allowing her to kind of take it into her hands. We're allowing her to receive this, but then as an offering of our own power to her, it's just helping that bond and that connection with Mother Earth. So actually, our last red tent, we had a wombs giving, and our opening ceremony was us going outside and we offered our blood. So we invited our sisters to either bring their own moon blood if they have it, or I made this little tincture that looked like moon blood. So no one, if anyone didn't have it, they would have something that looked like it but symbolized it. And we created this rose petal circle, and we threw in other herbs. We threw in some candle wax. We threw in all kinds of things just to continue to that offering to Mother Earth. And so then my sister and I started first, and I set the intention for why I was offering this. And intention is everything, especially with working with your moon blood. It is with any kind of magic. And so I know my intention was to continue to share this magic and continue to remember the sacred power of menstruation and encourage other women to remember that too, because by remembering our power, nothing can stop us from anything in any part of our life. And so what we did is we just poured a little bit of that and we sang and did our drums. And I have a bear drum that I beat as we were singing, and we sang the song, I hear the voice of my grandmother calling me. I hear the voice of my grandmother calling me. Step down your path, darling, step down your path. Step down your path, darling, step down your path. She said, listen, listen. She said, listen, listen. We sang that over and over again at each sister, and there was 13 of us total, offered their blood or this tincture to Mother Earth. So it was done together in community. It was done with the intention that we are offering our blood to not only connect to Mother Earth, but to heal, to let go, but also to connect and to commune. And as we know too, when we offer our blood to the earth or like our garden, it will actually fertilize our crops and make them grow even more abundantly. And it's a better fertilizer than any kind of fertilizer you can buy on the market, period. Like your period blood is the most powerful fertilizer on this planet. There's a lot of stem cells in there too. So we really talk about that. And it's a really, I think, important for us to get back to it because it's a natural part of just living and being and who we are. And why just dump all the blood, or why just trash it or get rid of it like it's nothing? Because it's not.
Why did the song that you just sang, thank you for doing that, bring tears to my eyes? I mean, I really had a reaction to it.
Because
Did
you're
you, Raquel?
remembering.
Yeah, it was really pretty. I like that.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a very traditional song. I encourage you to sing it anytime you are connecting to your womb or your ancestors or ancestry. But I think it's that deep womb remembering. And as we know, emotions are the key to feeling, to our intuition. So I think there's a part of you that knows this and remembers this. And at one time in the past life, whether or not you believe in that, probably practice this. And it's empowering because for the longest time, I know for me, growing up, it was very taboo. I didn't have a good sacred relationship. When I first got my period, I remember because we had a spaghetti that day. So I thought I had like pooped out spaghetti. My mom didn't really
Wow.
have like the talk with me. And
Yeah.
so when I showed her my underwear, I just remember feeling like embarrassed
Yeah.
and not sure. And then her response was, oh, you started your period. And I'm just like, what does that
What?
mean?
Yeah, exactly.
What?
And I was also very young. I started when I was 9.
Oh,
So
wow.
Yeah,
I
I
was the
started when I was
first.
10.
You're 10? Okay. So, and most women, typically, I've noticed that most women who start young, it's a family lineage thing. And that makes me
Mhm.
feel like a lot of those women in the family were forced to become women or grow up very quickly in their lives. And it's just a
Oh,
trauma
yeah.
that has been passed down. Yeah, same
Yep,
here.
yep, yep, yep.
But I was one of the only menstruating women of my age at that time.
Yeah,
And so I was embarrassed. And I was also during that time, I was going through a period where I really was just in my tomboy era. I wanted nothing to do with being a girl or a woman at all. It really challenged a lot of that. And it made me feel gross. No one taught me any of these things. I had to teach myself.
how did you get to where you are now with doing the red tents and bringing about sisterhood and talking about remembering our power as women and the power of our bodies and and starting a meaningful dream. How did you get to where you are right now?
I will say it's a long, windy road. So most of the things that I do now, the work that I do now, was not anything I was necessarily searching for. It kind of found me. And
Hmm.
in some ways, I was searching for things, but it all kind of found me. And so, to really be honest, a lot of trauma got me to where I am because there was a point in my life when I was 18 where my mom I love her to death, but she is mentally ill and had lied to me for 7 years of my life, telling me that she was going to die and all of these
Mm.
other things. And I've never had a really good relationship with either of my parents. From 5 up until 16, I would fly unaccompanied minor to my dad's house in Virginia, or maybe sometimes to my family in California to visit them. I wasn't allowed to leave the country until I was 18. It was just like a whole mess. So there was just a lot of like womb trauma that I have had, honestly,
Mm.
since I was born. During that dark time was a time where it was like the dark night of the soul. And I think that kind of took years for me to come out of and
Right.
to find people and to start asking questions. It took me being in a very toxic relationship to recognize these parts of myself, or to recognize and to confront some of my own trauma that I experienced, to no longer be a victim to it, because I saw, words are magic. They truly
Hmm.
are. I saw that. So over time, magic found me. The person that I was working at this company called Lush Cosmetics, and I really attest a lot of Lush to my awakening or discovery, because that was where my friend gifted me my first tarot deck. And I started to teach myself. And then eventually I got hired as professional tarot reader. And then it just kind of went from there. Same with crystals and same with all the other things. And so a lot of it just comes from a place of feeling beaten, lost, broken, unsure, and having these things show up in my life that I could turn to, that gave me that power back, that gave me that that reconciliation with myself along with my past. And so then I started to actively manifest things. I started to actively say, this is what I want and this is what I'm looking for. But I also surrender to what the universe wants to have for me too. So it was just a lot of understanding that there's a lot of unlearning for me to do in order for me to get that power back. And it took a lot of people taking my power away. I can't tell
Hmm.
you how many of my friends back in the day have stolen from me, or even family members trying to steal from me, or business people stealing something from me and saying that it's theirs, or people trying to like abuse my power or see that I have something and they try to take it away from me. So it took a lot of, honestly, just getting beaten and a lot of like the universe slapping me in the face until I decided to be like, I need to like make some conscious changes here. I can't
Hmm.
be a victim in my life anymore. So then it started to become like, I need to find better friends, but I also need to be a better person myself. And I believe that when you do anything for yourself, when you serve yourself and you love yourself lovingly and unconditionally, you're automatically serving the collective. You're putting in
Yeah.
that DNA for your sisters and your family and all of those people to do the same for themselves. It's a really long like story if you do want all the details, but I don't know if we have enough time for all the details. But I will say it just took a lot of like looking at myself in a mirror and being like, I'm not happy and
Hmm.
I don't like this and enough is enough, but also letting go of my power, experiencing that, being in an abusive relationship, being in toxic friendships, being in toxic workplaces, having to get sick a lot. There were so many jobs that I got sick out of. I didn't get fired or I didn't get let go of. It was because I got so sick, because I was just literally selling my soul to something that didn't
Hmm.
fulfill me. And
Yep.
I would get so sick that I either had to quit before I got fired or
Hmm.
something else. And
Right.
actually, it was around the time where I almost lost my ovary that I really feel like that's like when something clicked, when I was like, oh shit, I could potentially lose my ovary. I had a cyst that grew about 4 centimeters and it had like hair, nails, and teeth and stuff inside, but it was latched on to my ovary. And I
Oh
remember
my.
right before the surgery, yeah, the doctor was like, we might not be able to get it all. If we can't drain it all, we might actually have to remove your ovary. And I was only like 19.
Wow,
And
that's
so,
really traumatic at any age, but at 19, I mean, you're so young at that point.
yeah. And I can tell you, I had a lot of mama trauma. I had a lot of daddy issues. I felt like I was kind of being forced out into the world. I had no safety net. I was my own
Mhm.
safety net, but I couldn't trust myself. And it just was a lot of unresolved energy and emotions that manifested into that ovarian cyst. And then a few years later, it took me losing my appendix for me to realize that I can't be in corporate America. I can't work these jobs like people want me to work. Like I can't. I physically cannot. Like I don't know if I can risk any more body parts at this point in order to do that. And shortly after I had had my surgery, I was supposed to go back to work, but I had used all my sick days and I'm still in a lot of pain after my
Mhm.
appendix, and they only would give me short-term disability, and they told me that I shouldn't be in pain and that I'm making it up and that they can't support me or give me any more money because I'm just making it up and that I
Oh my
just need
God.
to like take some medicine and just go on with my life. And that's clearly not like what the reality was. But at the
Right.
same time, I was offered to go on a cruise, which allowed me the opportunity to have my first shaman experience in Belize, which then opened me to my very first medicinal plant walk and my very first cacao ceremony, along with just my exposure to what this life could be. And I kid you not, I at the time had no idea that I was like literally visiting my future self, because all of those things that those shamans do on their land is essentially what I'm doing right now.
That's so cool.
Wow, that is
Yeah.
What
cool.
what exactly is a shaman?
A shaman is somebody who understands the secrets of the universe. They understand the secrets of the mind, the body, the soul, and have an ability to communicate with both the physical world and the non-physical world, and along with the dream world, and are healers essentially. They are people who they are intuitively are in tune with their surroundings, with nature, with the people that they meet. And I would definitely say I am definitely that. I offer, I am a tarot reader. I also read Oracle, but I'm an intuitive and a medium too. I really don't need cards, but a lot of people just, they like it. And I like it too. It's fun, but I don't need them. I also do what's called limpias. So limpias is
Oh yeah.
Spanish for cleanse. Yes, yes. And actually, you can see some of these on my YouTube channel. And I've been actually the last year or so, I've been really highlighting doing them for big groups of people along with individuals. And essentially, it's healing with the elements. And so it's being able to tune into your physical and your spiritual body and being able to understand, okay, this maybe has like, it's not balanced, or we're storing this and it's preventing you from really saying this or doing this. And so I'm here to clear it and to remove it. I'm not here to do the work for you. That's like very clear. And I think a lot of people think that shamans, you go and visit them, they do a magic spell and boof, your life is fixed.
You're
No, no,
fixed.
no.
Ta-da.
Yeah, we're not broken. Like we're not broken. Like no one's broken. Like that's not a thing. But a lot of people have that perception. And so
Yeah.
it's
I'm
it's a
so glad you said that.
conversation.
Said you feel like something's out of balance. Do you actually feel that in your body? Like, how do you get that sensation?
It can be different for everybody. So I
Hmm.
typically can feel things. I can also hear things. I also see things in my mind's eye. I can also smell things and I can also taste things. So it really just depends on the client and what we're talking about, what I'm feeling and what I'm seeing. And there has been
Wild.
times where I've even purged for clients too, whether it be
Wild.
crying or sweating. That's like that typically happens. Like I know I'm doing healing work and I can like even now I'm like even just talking about this is healing work. Like I'm gonna sweat because that's telling me there's a lot of energy running through me. There's a lot of energy in the room. I might even feel like if I'm like over somebody's body, your left knee is hurting you. This is because like I feel like there's this imbalance, or I feel like you have headaches often. There was a reading that I did recently where right before I even started, I just felt like I had to throw up and I could taste something. And I had asked my client, "Are you eating things that your body isn't agreeing with?" And she goes, "Yeah, I've actually been drinking coffee and I know I shouldn't be." And it's like,
Oh
yeah,
no.
I feel it.
Wow.
Do you have any weird feelings coming up about Raquel or myself?
I was gonna ask
Mm,
that.
I thought
no,
maybe it
I
was
don't.
your knee.
I mean, I definitely did feel like a knee thing for sure. So I don't know if anybody's knee is hurting. Your knees do
I
symbolize, yeah, your knees.
yeah, I've been having knee issues. Yeah.
So your knees symbolize your connection from the spirit realm into like the earthly realm. So you're
Okay.
probably going through, depending on which side it's on, kind of going through and not like an identity thing, but like how you receive spirituality, how you receive fulfillment, what that looks like to
Totally.
you. And I'm
Yeah.
Totally.
hearing something about like your father's side of the family also coming up around some of these things too. And I don't know if
Wow.
it's just like some of their belief or just some of the things. And depending on how connected we are with their family, if you're really connected with some of your family members or even like a sister, you could end up manifesting something of theirs, even though it might not be yours, depending on your own connection.
Wow.
Um, but
Yeah,
I do feel
I'm not
that.
close to my dad's family at all. At all. Yeah.
Do you want to be in some
Nope. uh,
Yes, she does
no,
in some
no,
capacity.
I don't know. I
Yes,
don't
the
know.
little
I don't know.
girl in
Maybe,
you
yeah,
wants
okay, yeah.
that father connection.
Yes,
Yes,
the
yes.
little, yeah, little Raquel definitely wanted to be daddy's little girl and be like that, right? Like this is way off topic. But
No,
I mean that's definitely something that I feel I missed out on because my dad was a jackass and he and my mom had a very contentious divorce. So yeah, so I did not grow up being close to my dad or to his family at all.
so ways that we can heal that without necessarily connecting with your family is one, fathering yourself. So how can you
Okay.
father yourself right now? There's also a meditation or a visualization that you can do where you can visualize your current self now, going back and telling little Raquel, like, it's okay. You are
Mm-hmm.
loved and you are safe and you are protected. But then I would also say too, like if there's certain sides or certain parts of your dad's side, like culturally or anything like that, that sometimes connecting in that aspect can also really help. So for me, my dad and I have also kind of, we have a good relationship now, but it's been pretty rocky. And I am half Mexican and I feel the most connected to my Mexican side of my family, but I didn't really grow up with my Mexican side of the family. I grew up with my very white side of the family. Growing up, a lot of me kind of rewriting that narrative because also wanted to be that daddy's girl was okay, I'm going to connect to my Mexican heritage and my Mexican culture, and I'm going to cook myself foods that I really find enjoyable for myself, or I'm going to do research here, or do this here. And that alone can
Mm-hmm.
really heal a lot of any trauma within the lineage. And I also want to be surprised that within the time frame of you doing that, that somebody from your dad's side reaches out to you because even though they might not know it subconsciously and that DNA, they'll be able to pick it. They'll be able to feel it. It's the energy cord
Wow.
that's connected. I would encourage you to to try some of those things and see where
Okay.
it takes you.
Okay. All right.
Big
Cool.
love for you, Mama
Cool.
Rainbow, for helping Raquel with that. Big love.
Thank
Of
you.
course, it's what I'm here
Thank
to
you.
do.
I appreciate that very much. Thank you.
You're so welcome.
On your Instagram, you said, we've been disconnected to Mother Earth for too long, that we have forgotten that we have natural abilities to manifest and move with the elements. It's time we remember our power and use it to elevate higher consciousness into the collective. There's so much there in that paragraph, but can you explain what higher consciousness means?
Absolutely. So actually, on that note too, my husband and I also have a podcast called Higher Consciousness. Higher consciousness is essentially having that bird's eye perspective, I would say. Being able to see truth in all, being able to observe from a place of non-judgment, and also being able to exist in a place of balance and peace and harmony. And so having that higher consciousness gives us that lens and that perspective of who we are, our place in the world, along with everyone else and their place in the world, with good and bad. I personally don't believe in good or bad. I think it's all the same. It all comes from the same place and it all has relevance. Without all of the trauma that I endured, I would not be the person who I am today. So I'm grateful that I went through all the shit that I went through because it brought me right to here, right now. So I think higher consciousness is just the ability to understand the higher kind of knowledges, higher perspectives, and maybe even understanding things that might not necessarily be translatable in terms of vocabulary and words. It's a feeling, I feel like higher consciousness is that higher essence of love, or that ultimate essence of love, of being able to love unconditionally, regardless of whatever it is.
You know, when I hear you talk about higher consciousness, it makes me think about the idea that I've always had about higher consciousness, is that it's something that connects all of us, right? It's something that we're all a part of. I remember having this conversation with a friend of mine in college a million years ago. We were talking about the collective unconscious, and we were talking about how what we thought about afterlife and collective energy and all this. And I remember telling him that I think it's something that we all go back to, that we all come from and we return to at some point, a higher conscience. For me, it helps to explain how we have a collective knowing, how there's a common thread that goes through all of humanity.
Absolutely. I like to say it's like one eye, but then we're all the different perspectives of that eye. We are the living different perspectives of that eye, but we essentially come from that one thing. But we're still, it's like the tree of life, essentially.
Yeah.
We are all that one tree, but we are the roots, we are the branches, we are the leaves that make up that one tree.
God, I love that. That's amazing.
Well, what are some things people can do to elevate their consciousness if they're so interested?
To answer your question, honestly, I think the first step to elevate is just to be self-aware of who you are, of who you're not, of your light, of your shadow, what makes you tick, what doesn't make you tick, what brings you joy. I think all of those things are a key to elevation. And there's so many different ways that we can elevate our consciousness and we can elevate our mind, body, and soul. There really isn't one hard core, like, that's it, that's the only way.
You must do that.
Yeah. Like that doesn't, no. That's not fair. It's not like a one size fits all sort of thing. So for me, there are so many different ways that you can elevate consciousness, but dancing is one of them. I like plant medicine. So whether that be cannabis or psilocybin or any other types of plant medicine, I'm open to that as well. It can also be just having conversations. It could be meditating. It could be yoga. It can just be journaling. It can be doing magic. It can be doing candle magic. It can having conversations, hard conversations with your family about the past, about trauma, about what you desire to see. I think manifesting is a way of doing it. I think singing and using your voice is a way of elevating consciousness and sound frequency. That's why the sound frequency and the sound bowl healings are such a big thing right now, because the frequency of that music is elevating your energy, and music is the original language. I think even, working with the elements, using water, drinking water, just taking care of your body in general is how you can elevate your consciousness. Water is the most sacred thing in terms of what we can put into our body. So why aren't we just drinking more water? Like, just drink more water. You'll feel more elevated automatically. Being with Mother Earth, being in nature is another way we can elevate. So, there's a lot of different ways we can create. We can have even sex. Sex is a way of elevating our consciousness.
Yeah.
Yes. Creating things, gardening, being with our pets, especially with their pets too, because then at that point, we're now sharing a consciousness. They're connected to our consciousness. And so just by being aware of them, that can also help elevate consciousness. There's a lot of different ways that we can really go about it. It's really a matter of finding what works for you. And as you change and as you grow and as you evolve, you might find that certain things that once worked for you may no longer work for you in that same way. I also love taking baths and meditating and having a joint in the bath with
Well,
cacao.
water. Again, it's water.
Yeah,
Did you just say having a joint in the bath with cacao?
absolutely.
Damn, that sounds fantastic.
Yes, I actually made some cacao for this. Yes, yes,
Nice.
yes.
I am of the
Yeah.
generation of the DARE program. I need to unlearn some of these patterns I have towards cannabis.
Same.
'Cause
Same.
You too?
Yeah, but I think
Yeah.
mine is more of, for so long we were told it was bad and
Yeah.
that we were bad if we participated in it. It's that whole, like, I've got to be the good girl. It's unlearning all that whole good girl thing. It's the whole thing of, so many people in brown and black bodies being criminalized because of cannabis. And so there's still some fear for me in that realm. Like I've kind of dipped my toe in, but only like CBD or like gummies that have a tiny bit of THC. But like I haven't gone like whole hog into anything because I'm still I'm a little afraid.
That's okay.
So,
And
yeah.
honor that.
Plus, I think I have a control issue, and I don't necessarily want to lose
You?
complete control. I know, right?
Well, cannabis is really good for just helping you relax. And it does kind of, in a way, allow you to surrender on some level. I think it does have that taboo and stigma of being lazy and sitting on the couch and not being productive and all of that stuff, because it does have an element where it does ask you to rest. But cannabis is a feminine plant medicine. It's a sacred plant medicine. And actually, marijuana, yes, it is. Marijuana is named that. It's a Spanish slang term because it was believed, the Mexicans believed and understood that by smoking marijuana, it was a way of connecting to the Mother Mary, the Virgin Mary. And that's marijuana is a translation of Mother Mary.
No,
That is fascinating.
I had no idea.
Yes, yes. And Jesus used marijuana. His family actually owned hemp farms. And he used it in his anointment. Like, where the Father, Son, Holy Spirit comes from? This is your third eye. And so Jesus would use a hemp oil, a THC, to anoint your third eye, because what does cannabis do? It opens up your third eye. It makes you think. It makes you have these different perspectives. It makes you put things together. Why do we think that all of these big artists and these big movies and all of these things, like, they're all using cannabis, they're all using psychedelics? Like, how do you think Disney got to be where it is?
Like, you just opened a whole new world for me. A whole new world.
Yes, yes. Again, going back to the patriarchy and going back even to the 1950s, where Nixon was in power, and this is where a lot of reefer madness came through and all of that stuff. And there's a very specific quote, which I don't have it on me, but it basically says, and this was like one of the people who really initiated this laws, where they basically said, did we know that we were lying about cannabis? Absolutely. If we knew that if we could take the power away from the Mexicans and make the blacks seem that they are criminals, that we can control the masses and do whatever we want.
Yep. And they wanted to take control away from like the hippies too. Yep. I know what you're talking about. And
capitalism.
It was a whole thing of purposely politicizing and criminalizing and capitalizing on what they saw as something that was a threat to their power.
And that's exactly what it is.
Yeah. That chaps my ass.
Wow.
Yeah. Actually, back in the day in America, if you were a farmer, it was mandated for you to have a hemp farm. And we used it for everything. Like even George Washington, he had a hemp farm. He had a cannabis farm. Like,
no, I am learning so much. Oh my God. Mama Liz, my eyes are being opened. Thank you so much. This is amazing.
You're so welcome. Thank you. It's such a pleasure to be here.
Was there anything you wanted to tell us that we didn't ask about? Because I have a billion more questions, but we'll never get through them. So what did you want to say?
What do I want to say? Well, I will say this, since we are on the topic of cannabis, I do want to say this because I think it is important. I don't know how involved or how connected you are to the current cannabis culture. It is kind of going through a lot of other things in this world and in this lifetime, a patriarchal colonization kind of way of being.
Sure.
And there's also this very like hard money hungry, very like polluted, using like pesticides, even like in dispensaries, putting like poisonous like things that, you know, ultimately aren't good, and mixing it with cannabis. Now I live in Michigan, so it's completely legal here, and psilocybin has also been decriminalized in, I believe, 4 different cities: Detroit, Hazel Park, Grand Rapids, and I think there's one other place, so maybe it's just 3. So entheogens are technically decriminalized in those spaces right now. And I've seen this by going and traveling at concerts, music festivals, particularly, and just like in the weed community, that there's this sense of overconsumption, abuse, and it just is this thing of like, how high can we get? How much can we smoke? How like, and it's just, that takes away the whole point and the sacredness and the medicine and the conscious use, where it becomes like, let's just smoke just to get high. And then let's also mix it with meth or alcohol or other kinds of things, because then you're just mixing a cocktail of things that really don't go together. We're not meant to mix alcohol with cannabis. Like, you're really not. It's 2 totally different. It's like working with 2 different entities. Like, imagine alcohol being like, this is an extreme version, but imagine it being like the devil, right? And then imagine cannabis being like Mother Mary. What do you think's gonna happen when you mix those 2 together? Like without that conscious intention. And so there's a lot of people who just use it without that intention, and are also just trying to force the plant to be something that it isn't. Like, we're not honoring the time and the energy that it takes for this plant to be here. And if we can use it in a really loving and harmonious and conscious way, then I think we can see a shift in the weed community. But currently, as every other part of the community, that there's a sense of like, how much money can I make? How high can I get? Also like, how can I like be better competition or be in better business? And it's just like, this is not what the plant is. This is not what the plant does. This is not what it's for. Like, marijuana, cannabis, it brings people together. It brings people into that higher consciousness state of thought. That's actually the theme of our podcast. We call it higher consciousness to get to those things, but also because we're smoking. So higher consciousness. So
Well,
I've been
it's
seeing,
getting away from the sacred. It's getting away from the feminine aspect of it and taking advantage of it. And we see that time and time again. That's what happens when capitalism runs rampant.
yep, absolutely.
And well, it's a shame. I hope that people are kind of, trying to take that back and calm things down a bit.
There are. It's just right now, it's not in the main social media. It's not in the
Yeah,
main like perspective right now, but it is happening.
good,
Every bad thing that's happening right now, there is a counter to it. There are people who are currently working on changing some of the laws or changing the
good.
bills or are just being like, I think honestly, the most powerful thing that we can do to combat a lot of these things is be, just be who
Yeah.
you are. So yeah, I did just need to say that just because I've been seeing it a lot. I've also been seeing just in the collective culture, just kind of on the same part of, abusing drugs or just plant medicines in general. There has been an increase of people abusing
Yeah,
substances. And I think in some ways I'm being asked to just talk about it so we can do something about it. And at the end of the day, we can't tell people don't use. That doesn't
right.
work. It's statistically better to provide safe usage and to provide tools and resources because that will
Hmm.
actually save more lives. And it also opens up this trust because most people do it because they don't feel loved. They don't feel they have a person to go to where they can truly be themselves or trust. And so when you create that a level of trust, somebody who might get the safe usage might see, okay, there is love and there is support. So if I did decide to no longer partake in these things, I do have these resources to me. And I think we also have to just come from a place of unconditional love and unconditional non judgment. So many people are so scared to even come out of those spaces because they don't feel like they can. We're in a time right now where there's a shift happening in our consciousness, and there are people who are either going to move forward and elevate or stay the same. We have to love everyone for who they are and the level in which they're at or not at, despite their choices and despite our own choices. We need to love and understand that most of these people are just hurt and they don't feel
Yeah.
seen and they don't feel supported. And that's ultimately the root of it all. Unfortunately, that can sometimes mean people act out of anger and frustration and can act violently, but it's ultimately a lack of love. And that kind of goes along with the concept and the idea of the Rainbow Warriors, which is also something that I did want to briefly discuss. So, have either of you heard the prophecy of the Rainbow Warriors before?
No.
No.
Okay, so this is a prophecy. It is a Native American prophecy. It is a Cree and Hopi prophecy. You can go ahead and look it up after this if you would like to read. The prophecy of the Rainbow Warriors is the Rainbow Warriors are a group of people who come from different backgrounds, races, trauma, places, ideas, belief systems, skin, like all the things, and come together in order to shift the consciousness of the earth. And by the Rainbow Warriors coming together, by them shifting this collective consciousness, they're essentially here to like save the planet. So essentially, our resources, our natural resources, once these Rainbow Warriors combine and come together, will come back. Even extinct creatures and mythical creatures are also said to come back, and that we would shift more into a peaceful and harmonious consciousness within our time. And I believe that we're in that beginning time right now. I understand and know that the work that I'm doing is just the groundwork and the foundation, that I might die and have to come back another lifetime before I see the full scale of what my work really does. But the Rainbow Warriors, this is the time for the Rainbow Warriors to awaken. This is the time for the Rainbow Warriors to understand what our powers are and to reconnect back to our unique magic and use that not just for, for saving the planet, but for our own well-being, for our family, for our community, for our children. And essentially it's just coming back to a space of reconnecting with Mother Earth, reconnecting with the oneness that we all are. And so I always tell people, if you've interacted with me, you are a rainbow warrior.
Oh, Jennifer, we're rainbow warriors.
Yes.
That's awesome.
I'm honored. I think that's awesome.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah. So know that like you having these conversations alone, that's shifting the consciousness. That's shifting your community because you're creating awareness, you're creating space for people to be seen, you're creating a space for people to be heard and for people to be supported. And that is a big portion of raising the consciousness, is just loving and giving space to love one another as they are and as they're not.
Thank you, Mama Rainbow. Thank you for being on the planet and doing the work that you're doing and working with the Rainbow Warriors and the red tents and sisterhood and coming here and talking to us and sharing more so that we can help get that message out there.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Love you all.
There's so much bright energy to Mama Rainbow that how could you not be affected by her? How could you not want to be one of the Rainbow Warriors?
Oh, and she was describing the Rainbow Warrior as like, I want to be a Rainbow Warrior. And then she said we were.
Yeah.
So I was like, yeah. I also think that I thought you were very, very, very brave to mention the use of cannabis and being a Black person, because it is a huge, I mean, it's like the symbol of racism in a way.
Yeah.
In a way. It's not the
Very much
only
so.
symbol of racism. I'm not trying to say that.
It's one of the many.
Yeah. It's growing up in the 80s with the DARE program. I bought that shit hook, line, and sinker.
Oh, yeah.
I think I had a
Same.
t-shirt that said DARE across it. And I was like, do not do drugs. Now I'm thinking, and I know I said this before when we had Jess from Detroit Social on.
Yeah.
And she was talking about cannabis. I had this same realization way back then that I need to look at these limiting beliefs that were placed inside by our society. Like this was done on purpose.
Yeah. And you know what? And you bringing that up and saying that, we're going through our own unlearning.
We are.
With all of this, because we are listening to the people who are talking about these things.
True.
And we aren't just, shutting it out and ignoring it. We're listening and engaging in conversation with people who are talking about this kind of stuff. And that's important. That's important for us too. And these are the kinds of conversations and the kinds of thoughts and reactions that we want people to have when they listen to our show. Sort of recognize and interrogate your own thinking. Like, where did your thoughts come from? Were these thoughts put into your head by the DARE program, by the
and yes, they were. Yes, they were.
Absolutely. So so this is an awakening for us too.
Yeah. And she said that people could come to the red tent whether they were menstruating or not. And a lot of our audience, not all of our audience, but a lot of it were menopausal
we're postmenopausal,
and yet we still have a rhythm.
We're still in cycle with the moon, whether we're menstruating or not. And there's a sisterhood in that, like what she was saying about the red tent, that whoever wants to be in the red tent, you can come to the tent and you can find sisterhood there.
She just opened up a whole world for me. Yeah. Mama Rainbow, and I want to learn more. And it's a good talk when you want more. I want more.
Exactly. Yeah.
Bye, Raquel.
Bye, Jennifer. Bye.
Thanks everyone for listening today. We will be back with more Madness Cafe next week. You can find us on Instagram at Madness Cafe Podcast or email us at madnesscafepodcast@gmail.com. Bye.